Welcome, everybody, to the Purple Knights podcast. It's been a while, but we're finally back on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And today I've got a special guest with me. He's the station manager for Real Music Radio and the host of Masterclass with Christopher Arnel. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Christopher Arnel to the Purple Knights podcast.
Hey everybody. Hey Chris, it's a pleasure, man. I've been watching you as the podcast has grown and from its inception and everything. And man, just congratulations. And it's an honor to be on your show.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's exciting to have you on. You do a lot of great stuff with Real Music Radio, and I've listened to Masterclass a few times, and that's really good as well. So I appreciate what you do as well.
Thank you.
So what were we going to talk about here today? I mean, we talked about maybe talking about some of our favorite tracks, right?
Yeah, I think that's like probably the most, in my opinion, the most taboo question that a person can ask you. It's like, what's your favorite Prince song? Because typically it depends on your mood of the day. It depends on what day of the week it is, what mood you're in, what kind of day you've had, and all of that.
Right, right.
I think the real fans, I think we can usually bring it down to one specific song and say like this is the one. And for me, even I tried for years to cop out and say, well, it depends on my mood, depends on the day, depends on whatever. But I myself, I can pin it down to "Condition of the Heart" from "Around the World in a Day."
Oh, really?
Yeah,
The mainly because of the piano in the first half, or why do you love it so much?
I think I found that song when, well, I had the "Around the World in a Day" album when I was 10 when it first came out, and of course, everybody expected him to do Purple Rain 2, and so the album was entirely different. I'd never heard that style of music before because I didn't grow up listening to the Beatles and anything kind of psychedelic, so I'd never heard anything like it before, and just that song itself, I never really heard anything with any big orchestration, with any big buildups, with somebody singing the way he was singing, with the emotion, and I knew at 10 years old, I knew like he was singing from a real place, like that was coming from a real place inside.
Right.
And so I think one of the first times that I heard it, when I sat down and actually just listened to the entire album by myself, I think I actually even shed a tear listening to that painful, like when he gets to the buildup, like, now isn't that a shame that sometimes money buys you everything and nothing, like that that vocal right there is just like almost like, I don't know, like tore me apart because you can hear the pain and like longing and pleading in his voice, like he got hurt really bad, and like when he was recording that, like he was in some kind of pain that um, most of us should hopefully never have to feel, because that was rough.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I agree. I mean, the first memory that I have of Prince is actually Little Red Corvette, and there's not, there's not really a correlation between the emotion and that and the emotion and condition of the heart. But just to say that I heard the authenticity in his voice and the emotion in his voice and the passion in his voice. Um, when I was 3 years old, listening to Little Red Corvette on the radio. Of course, I was too young to comprehend the lyrics at the time, but just the emotion and the feel of his voice and the sound of the synths that Lisa Coleman uh, was playing. That iconic synth line,
Yeah,
and I could just feel the emotion radiating from Prince from that song. So I can definitely see where you would say that "Condition of the Heart" is a very emotional, very real, raw vocal performance. And yeah, it is a great, great song. And for years I always was kind of reserved talking about my favorite Prince song because it's his most popular song to begin with. So it's like if you admit that your his most popular song is your favorite song, it kind of revokes your hardcore hardcore fan stuff.
Yeah.
And they want you to love the deep cuts and only songs that the fan base knows. But Purple Rain is very close to me because um, and I haven't talked about this much, but I don't know if you saw the clip that I posted on Facebook probably a year and a half ago. I was asked to do an interview, a short interview for Mr. Ed's World of Prids on YouTube, and talk about um, Prince's impact on my life. And I talked about this experience that I had with Purple Rain, which was basically a spiritual epiphany because um, to get to get kind of deep and highly personal, you know, when I was 12 years old, well, back when I was a toddler, I was unable to stand up and do weight bearing, so my hip joints never settled into the sockets like they would do for a normal toddler because I was born with cerebral palsy. So I've always been in a wheelchair. So the cartilage around my hip joints wore away to where it was bone against bone,
Ooh.
and that's some of the worst pain that I've ever had to deal with in my life to this day. And that plus I was dealing with clinical depression at the time, entering puberty and all that stuff at that age. So I was very much in a dark place and contemplating taking my own life. Uh, and as I was contemplating poisoning myself, I had Purple Rain come on the stereo, and I had basically had a spiritual epiphany where uh, God or the universe or however you want to frame it, a spiritual higher power spoke to me through the music and told me that for one thing, Prince's music would always be there as a way to get in touch with not only my higher self but also a higher power that that helped that created us all, and it really showed me that I'm a child of God, and I'm more than physical matter. I'm more than my disability and my flesh. So
Yeah.
um so that song really resonates with me on a spiritual level, and because of that, it's my favorite. But I have plenty of favorites too that are also um you know not not known, beyond the hardcore fan community. Like I would say, like You're Gonna See Me from One Night Alone. I love
Yeah.
that song. Love that album. Um, Arboretum is one of my favorite instrumentals, and then of course the God instrumental for Purple Rain is probably my favorite instrumental. But um,
Yeah.
and I'll pull out a really obscure one that was only available as part of a MPG audio show, so it wasn't released as a single or anything. But Jukebox with a Heartbeat
Yes. I like that one too.
is a good track as well, and I like the sentiment that Prince shares in that song, where he talks about sometimes it feels like he's to the fans like he's just the jukebox with a heartbeat, that he can pull these popular songs, you know, out in a live setting and you know do what the crowd wants. But he also liked to hit us with deep cuts and stuff. He was struggling with the idea of being a, what do I want to say, like a people pleaser with as far as set lists and stuff. So
Yeah.
that really kind of resonated with me. But I don't know what are some of your other favorites that you can
Um,
think of?
I'm Future Soul Song from 2010
Yes.
is one of my favorites. I had really hoped that maybe around the time that people were really getting together and going to Minneapolis shortly after Prince passed, and that maybe we could have gotten like everybody together and recorded a video of even like through Zoom and that like getting everybody who wanted to be involved in it to like sing part of that song and then like make a video or whatever. But it was just something that wasn't able to get put together at the time. But that song, when I hear that one, I I'm not a very spiritual person, but I feel like how he says it in there, like between me and my God, it's my business, and
Right.
and and
Right.
and I'll do me, and you do you, and I won't bother you, and you don't bother me, and
Right.
and that, and I
Right.
and I like that. But then I grew up in the '80s, so I like his dirty stuff too. So like especially like some of the bootlegs that haven't been official, like "Me Touch Myself." I think that is an amazing track. Um,
Yeah.
Electric
Oh yeah.
Intercourse. I still love the rehearsal version of Electric Intercourse better than the actual released version, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
those songs, like I didn't even know anything about outtakes until high school. It was my sophomore year, and some friends took me to a record store that had imports, air quote, that had like the Jewel Box. Jewel Box One was my first outtake
Yeah.
set, and so like that's where I first heard Crucial um and She's Just a Baby and things
Yeah.
like, they were really terrible quality, but I heard them and I was just blown away, and I'm like, oh my god, these songs are amazing. And so then I had to get everyone that I could get my hands on, as did everybody. Just hearing the different genres and the different variations of songs. Like there's a couple of them where there's like 5 or 6 different variations of the same song. Week in Funk is one of those, um,
Yeah.
and just all of those. Like I can go through and I can pick a song a day for any reason and just be like, okay, well, for today, this is my favorite Prince song because, um, but I think, like Me Touch Myself, the Electric Intercourse, and then, um, there's a few outtakes that I heard from the For You sessions, Donna and I Miss You. I think those are also favorites because it was still when he was in his beginning stages, but the songs are still really good. Um, and they don't sound like anybody else. So
I
um,
Miss You is a really good one. It's really, really, I don't really hear many people talk about it because maybe not many people outside the hardcore fan base even know about it, but those of us who do, that's a really good one.
yeah,
And
it's short and sweet. It gets to the point, and then it's over. And that's
yeah,
not every song has to be a 10-minute opus. Sometimes you
right,
just need to get in, say what you want to say, and then you're done. And I think that
right.
would have been a cool segue between two songs or something. But hopefully, the estate will get their stuff together, and we'll start getting these deluxe versions again, and maybe we'll get a decent version of that song.
Yeah, I'm hoping this summer things will really sort of ramp up in June for celebration, and I plan on going. I'm about hour drive away from Minneapolis, about 40 minutes from Paisley Park, so not too far away. But um, uh, last celebration, my sister and my mother went, and it was interesting to hear Londell McMillan talk about the whole Netflix deal. You know, he didn't get
Yeah,
really too detailed into things for obvious reasons, but they're trying to work out a compromise, is what he basically says, with an edit of the Netflix documentary. So we'll see what comes with that. I don't know if you saw the ad in the magazine that was circulating that said that the documentary was coming in 2026 or 2027. That was one of the bullet points. There was this documentary. They had a photo of Prince from Batman Sessions, I believe, and then it was reused for the Ultimate. Um, that's the photo they had, and then they had several bullet points about you know, about the next celebration basically being Purple Rain Part Two, and then they had the documentary coming in 2026 or 2027. So, um,
Yeah, I think everybody's afraid. I think in the estate, at least, they seem to be afraid to let people understand that he was a real human being.
yeah,
And one of the things that I found through doing room music radio and stuff and meeting some of my idols and people who've played with him is it's very complicated because on one hand he's the nicest guy you ever wanted to meet, but on the other hand he's the biggest asshole you ever met too. And so you
right,
have you have that, and also he's human. So when they're afraid that they're going to tell stories about like him when he was seeing Elisa or Maite in the beginning, not to excuse anything that may or may not have been appropriate at the time, but he was also human. Like he's not he's
exactly,
fallible, and so you know when you're in a situation where you can have literally anything you want, then
yeah, yeah,
unfortunately take advantage of everything you can get. And so
yeah,
maybe he wasn't with them until they were 18 and whatever, and if not, that's remarkable and whatever. But if people that were like, oh well, he was grooming and he was this and that, well, maybe, but if that's part of him, then just put it out there. I mean, there's editing it up to take those things out and to try to safeguard it just basically feels to me like you're putting out a watered down version of something that you're changing the narrative because you're making it tell your version of Prince rather than the real version. And
right,
for my money, I want to hear the real version. I want to hear the things that aren't positive. I want to hear the things that are not music related because those are the things that make him a real person versus just turning on a song and being like, oh, this is the best song ever. Well, it was, but there's a human behind that. And that's the person that
right,
I want to meet in the documentary, not somebody's cleansed version to make him seem like he was never a bad person or he never made mistakes because
right,
he was
right,
human. And
right. I mean, to add to that, I think we all have our light sides and we all have our dark sides. We all have our faults and our different quirks and everything, and we're all human, right? We're
yeah,
None of us is perfect, so it's like, yeah, I can definitely understand, where people are coming from. Let's just say release the documentary, but on the other hand, I kind of worry about cancel culture in the past 20 or 30 years. People have gotten really extra sensitive and really seem to have sticks up their butt about,
yeah,
canceling people. And to me, it's just people have gotten way too sensitive about every little thing, and it's just so unfortunate.
right. Where I think where people need to go with that, because I do agree that that is an issue, is people need to look at it like, no, even though it's taboo now to listen to R. Kelly, everybody that that grew up listening to his music is still listening to him. They may tell everybody, oh, I don't listen to him anymore. They're listening to him. Every time his
Right,
song comes on, they're listening. And
right,
when they tried to do it with Brandon from Panic at the Disco, and they tried to do it with Michael Jackson and whatever, whether you agree with what they're accused of, and if you're on the side that thinks, okay, every time an artist is accused of something, they did it, okay, so cancel them. So it's okay if you don't listen to them. It's okay. You not listening to them is not going to, the albums that have already been released that have went multi quadruple platinum and whatever, it's not going to take that thing away. It's not going to take their
right,
money away. It's not,
right,
they've already made it. And
right.
I think where we have to look at it as a society is, yes, this person, at least we know, R. Kelly, we pretty clear that he did some bad stuff. So we know this, but there's nothing that you or I can do to change what he did. So what what did he do that personally affects me? Like,
Right,
because yes, he those of us who have survived abuse as a child, yes, that stuff's bad, and it's going to stay with the people that happened to. But and I know it sounds conceited and contentious to say, well, that doesn't have anything to do with me. But at the end of the day, it doesn't have it doesn't affect me in a personal way, other than to say that that's terrible behavior and you shouldn't do that. I'm not going to do that myself. But
Right,
to stop listening to somebody, especially somebody that you grew up listening to, is not going to change the impact that they've already had on your life. It's not going to change the impact
right,
that
right,
they had in music, and it's not going to, again, it's not going to take away their millions that they've already made. So you listening to a song in your car on an album that you've already purchased, I mean, people aren't going to stop listening. And for us diehard Prince fans, that's going to be the same way. And if the
yeah,
mainstream media hears something that they don't agree with, that's cool. But will he ever be 100% canceled? I don't think so, because I don't think even more so than the R. Kelly and Michael Jackson fans, I don't think the Prince fans are gonna. Nobody's gonna stop listening to him.
right,
Like, we all know that there's a gray area with Maite. There's a gray area possibly with others, but Maite's not saying that he did anything to her that was inappropriate.
right,
Elisa's not saying that he did anything to her that was inappropriate. And those are the only two people in the entire universe who that affects.
right,
So
right,
put out the thing, put it out, because the same thing with the things that happened with Michael Jackson and R. Kelly. The people that those things happen to are the people that those things affect.
right, right.
It's a terrible thing that happened, and again, you're not going to do that. I'm not going to do that, and we wouldn't wish it on anybody.
No,
But it doesn't affect us on a daily basis. I still get up every morning and go to work. R. Kelly didn't do anything to change what my daily habits are. I go to work, I come home, I
right,
pay my bills, I do what I got to do. Um, them trying to cancel Prince isn't going to stop me from listening. It's going to stop me from listening to him. I mean, I don't
yeah,
actively go in my collection to pull out an R. Kelly song a lot. I mean, sometimes, but not a lot. But my Prince stuff, I do. I go specifically if I'm in a terrible mood. I know what specific song like I can go to on this day that'll make me laugh or put me in a better mood. And if
yep,
I'm in a great mood, then I know a song that'll keep me in a better mood, or keep me
yep,
in a good mood. So
yep. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mainly I worry about the long term, the long term legacy of Prince and how that would be impacted at all by cancel culture. I mean, old school fans, I consider myself an old school fan, but I'm kind of an outlier or an exception to the rule in the fact that I was, 3 years old when I became a fan. So I'm super young in that regard as an OG fan, as it were. But um, fans are getting up there in age, and the estate's got to consider, how to bring new fans or new generations on board. And I worry with cancel culture how that's all gonna affect everything. But I'm with you. I'd like to see the the documentary, and I'm sure some of the stuff will ruffle my feathers maybe a little bit. But at the end of the day, he was human. He wasn't perfect. So, like you say, Christopher, I mean, it's you know showing all sides of the person who means so much to us and who created this music that means so much to us. So I think it's important to have a multifaceted uh, portrait of that person rather than as you say, like a sort of sanitized, watered
yeah,
down version.
and if they want to reach like the young people who are gonna be filtering in, after we're gone, and after our kids who and our family who have listened to him because of us, once they're all out of the picture, I mean, they have facets like when he was alive, he didn't want to do Guitar Hero because they didn't play a real instrument. Well, then they had Rocksmith that came out where you actually played a guitar. now, Prince isn't here anymore. You have access to all of his music. Put together like the hits, or put together the Purple Rain Guitar Hero album, or something like to
Yeah.
that effect, and release it, and then you get these kids engaged. And I know as an adult, like when Guitar Hero came out, I bought all the different versions, and I actually that's how I introduced myself to some different to dive in deeply to or deeper to some more of the rock jams that I had heard obviously on the radio, but I never really cared about. And then you're playing them on the game, so you're hearing them a lot. Like, okay, so cool. Now I like ACDC a lot more. I love Metallica and some of these bands that I would have never heard of,
Right.
like Reverend Horton Heat or whoever it is that the Psychobilly Breakdown or whatever the song is that so hard to play at the very end of one of them. Like I would have never heard that if I had bought the game. And
Yeah.
so if you want to introduce the younger crowd to it, they've got a really cool guitar that they just released for the PlayStation 5 for the Guitar Hero version, the Guitar Hero games. So put out a Prince version.
Wow.
You've got
Yeah, that'd be great.
albums upon albums to choose from, as long as you make sure that Purple Rain is your flagship song that you get to play at some point in the game.
Right. Right.
Should be at the very end. It should be the last thing that you unlock. But
Right.
you know they have ways to do those types of things to appeal to the younger crowd. Um, and it's just up to them to do it. And all
Yeah.
the fighting.
Yeah. And a real important aspect of it to me is just in getting the documentary released is just that it'll allow for, the regular flow of music and video to come
Yeah,
out again, because as far as we know, the Netflix deal is what's holding up, future super deluxe editions of projects. So if we can get the documentary out in some form, hopefully it's not, edited, or hopefully, in a perfect world, there would be an option, in my view, there would be an option of where people could see unedited or an edited version.
there you
They
go.
would both be out there for whichever version a person wanted to see, they could see it.
Yeah,
But I agree, just get it out, if only from the standpoint that then the floodgates can open a little more, and we'll start to see more regular releases of music and videos and whatever other content.
yeah, and I think a lot of fans have been screaming for it for a while. I think since Prince passed, is reopen the NPG Music Club. Give us that $100 or $200 a year premium edition option, and release concert videos and release some of these outtakes. Do it that way, and then
Right.
every month you have songs from the vault that you don't have time to put on a super deluxe release, or maybe you release the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe, and there was like, oh man, there was this one song that everybody wanted, but we didn't get to it, so let's put that on here. And we all wanted Lust You Always when the 1999 Super Deluxe came out. So oh cool, now we
Yeah.
can put that out there, and we can put an edited version for the people who are soft and don't want to hear how it really was, and you can put the unedited version option on
Right.
there for
Right.
the premium members who want to hear. Back back then in the 80s, he mentioned rape in like the first Extra Lovable, and also in that song. But if you when you grew up in the 80s culture and the way people talked and the way they talked, watching those goofy 80s adult movies that um, we shouldn't have watched, but we were exposed to, and occasionally that's how they talked in the thing. So I don't think that
Yeah.
he I don't think that he was trying to be like you know literal in the sense when he, oh, I'm going to do this to you. I think it was just how people are weird now and want like really rough stuff, and that. And I think that's basically what he was trying to say. Oh, we can get rough. Like I'll take advantage of you, like
Right.
if that's what you want. But it just that
Right.
was the word. So
Right.
that was the word in the 80s to use. And
And in his younger days, he was all about pushing the envelope and
yeah,
seeing how far he could take things. So it's like, if you put it in context, it isn't really, it isn't the end of the world that Prince said these things,
Yeah, and he
in
just
songs. But
when right, and when you take those songs out of like a thing like the 1999 Super Deluxe, if when you take those out of there, you're doing what they're trying to do with the documentary. They're condensing it for their sake, not for our sake.
yeah, I could see that. I could
Um,
see that definitely.
they they could have released a follow up download like you bought it on iTunes or you bought the package, you bought the big package, and inside the package, sometimes you buy vinyl and there's a download code in there to get the digital. And they could have
Right.
done that. They could have said, well, these two songs were too racy to be released on the actual package. If you want to buy these, or if you want to buy these, here's a link to the website. You can go purchase them additionally, or here's a download code since you spent $6,000 for the vinyl edition of the 1999 set. Here is a download code for Lest You Always and Extra Lovable, parental advisory, explicit lyric contained, whatever, yada
Right.
yada yada,
Right.
and there you go.
Right.
Um, so
Yeah,
the
I'm
MPG Music Club coming back would be good to have the option to get those songs.
oh yeah, that would be really the best case scenario as far as I can think, as far as I'm concerned, that would be the best case scenario. There might be some legal issues with the live shows because he did a lot of covers, so there might be some rights issues to navigate, with the covers. But other than that, I can't really see any, you know, logistic issues because there's artists like, uh, well, I know Jack White uploads his concerts to
Yeah,
a website, and Bruce Springsteen has a website with all of his concerts,
yeah,
uploaded, available for purchase. So
yeah. And Pearl Jam used to do that too
yes,
when they were trying to combat bootleggers. Like you could go to that show and I guess go to the merch booth and somehow you could buy the audio of that show. And then there's a couple of independent artists that I've been to see who also you go to their merch booth and you can actually sign up for a thing, pay $10, and then in a couple of weeks you get an email and it's the show you were at that you download. So I mean, that would have always been killer too. Like I saw bootlegs from every place in the world from Prince on video, but I never saw a St. Louis show. I know he wasn't here a lot. He was here a couple of times in 1982, and then he came back. Then he came back all the way in '97, and then he came back. He was here in '97, '98, and 2000. Was supposed to do One Night Alone here, but didn't, and then was supposed to come back in 3 nights before he actually passed. He was actually set to be in St. Louis, so he wasn't here a lot. But out of all the bootlegs that are on digital or MP3, and all of the ones that are on VHS and DVD, none of the shows from St. Louis, and that's such a bummer. Like, oh man, I was at this show or that show, and like you can't go back and watch it or can't go back and listen to it because it's not there. But the show in Atlanta that everybody went to, or the show in Kentucky that everybody went to, or the show, Minneapolis, of course, they're a dime a dozen. But
yeah,
so that would
yeah,
have been cool. That would be cool too. Is like you're an MPG member from here from St. Louis, so then I can log in and I can have the option on the live shows to like here was all the shows that Prince was in. Do I buy them separately? Are they part of the package? That's up to them to decide. But I think that they have lots and lots of options that they could bring, even using his past bandmates to be hosts for like those audio shows if they brought those back.
yes, yes, like they did, briefly when Prince was a channel on Sirius XM. They
Yeah,
had they had band members hosting, shows where they would pick out their favorite songs and sort of add their own commentary. And yeah, that would be really cool. I've actually had a similar experience to you, Christopher, with the first show that I attended. My first concert ever was One Night Alone in Seattle. And there's a ton of One Night Alone bootlegs out there, right? But I've never been able to find a bootleg of the Seattle show. So
uh,
I would love to be able to log on, like you said, log on to a website, scroll through and find the Seattle show and download it and listen to it again. It would be like I was there, all over
Yeah,
again. So that would be something like that would be huge.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I definitely agree. Well, tell me a little bit about Real Music Radio. You're the station manager. So what's your sort of mission statement with the station, and what do you guys stand for,
Well,
and
so Prince had this big thing towards the end where he was all about real music by real musicians.
right,
So Real Music Radio is all about real music by real musicians. You don't want to turn on Real Music Radio if you want to hear Britney Spears "Hit Me One More Time," um, or anything manufactured. Um, we have a little bit of old school hip hop on there. We have some old school R&B and stuff because again, that was real music when singers were singing. Um,
right,
we tried to in the very beginning. It was going to be catered mostly to the Minneapolis sound and to preserve Prince's music. Um, However, I found when I got the amazing opportunity to be the station manager that there are a ton of independent bands out there, not just in Minneapolis, but in Texas and in um, overseas in Europe that are out there making amazing music, but you would never hear it because local radio is not going to play it. Um,
right.
so I got to network with these artists and got to get their music and play it on the station. Started off by playing it on my show and then getting people interested in whatnot and then adding it to the playlist in the station. So you'll hear maybe Alexander O'Neill fake and then followed by this amazing band from Texas, Honey Rot. You'll hear them like right after, and then maybe right after them, you'll hear the Neon Romeos, who is a funk band from Sweden, who's very well respected in the Minneapolis area because of their Minneapolis sounding music. It's amazing that they sound like they were plucked out of Paisley Park, but they're from Sweden and
Wow,
they're
wow,
amazing. So as my show when I started it was a Minneapolis based show. As far as the talent, I branched out to all these other artists, and I said, okay, well now I'm managing the station, so we're going to still stick to real music by real musicians, but we're going to give all musicians a chance. If you're an independent artist, there's nowhere for you to go because if you're not signed to a record label that's bought and sold by Clear Channel, you're not getting on Sirius
right, right,
very often. I mean, you can rarely, but it's not a thing. Um, you're not going to get played on any of the Clear Channel stations across the country.
right.
Um, so I like, even though we don't advertise it a lot, we have the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, whatever. I like to think that FCC stands for F Clear Channel because the music you're going to hear on our station is not what you're going to hear on Clear Channel. You're going to hear the again real music by real musicians. The artists have a home with real music radio, and it makes them feel like they've made it because they know that at any time when their song comes on, it's going to be heard by not just Minneapolis, not just here in the U.S. Like they're literally being heard all over the world. At any given time, we have over 250,000 listeners worldwide, and we have a huge European market. So, like my show is every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, the masterclass. I also replay it every Wednesday at about 12:10, 12:20, during the day because it's like 6, 7 o'clock in Europe, so that those people don't have to sit up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to listen to the show.
Oh, sure, yeah.
They will, and they do, and it's amazing, and I'm so appreciative for that. But that's why we do the replay. So it's like, okay, guys, if you don't want to stay up all night long and listen to it on Tuesdays, it's cool. Listen to it on Wednesday when we do the replay. You can have dinner and listen to the show, and you'll still hear your song because it's untouched. And then um and so we started out with just we had one or two shows on the station, my show, and then John Sparrow had a show um, on Thursdays, and then John and Head went off to do some other things, and I got with a local Minneapolis DJ, Tony Erskine, aka Tony E. He came on board to do a mix for my show every week, and then he's like, "Hey, I know this DJ, I know that DJ, I know this DJ, and these guys." And so now we have little programming every week, every night of the week. We
Wow.
have on Wednesday nights, because I was able to um, get with these guys in Texas, this Honey Rot band. Um, I've got their lead singer hosts a show for me every Wednesday. It's called South Texas Border Town, and so it showcases all of the best music, independent music mostly from the South Texas region. So bands that you would never like, we would never, you and I would never ever hear because they're not signed
Right.
and they're not playing on
Right.
the radio. You would never hear them if you turn on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. You're going to hear Jorge Castillo play all these songs for you and introduce you to all these bands, and these bands are amazing. Like when you hear them, like you hear Honey Rot, for example, there's no reason why they're playing in clubs. They should be opening the main stage for My Chemical Romance or Green Day. And these guys, their stage presence is that good. I can only imagine if you were around Minneapolis in the 70s, seeing like all of those bands, the Family, Grand Central, and all those guys doing their battles. I can only imagine that maybe that's what it was akin to, because these guys have, there's
Right.
um, so much chemistry, and their stage presence is ridiculous, and they play all over. They're in demand all over Texas, and I've brought them up here once, and we're trying to get them up here again this fall. You won't see anything like it. Adversely, a band from Bemidji, Minnesota, I think I'm saying that right. Corey Medina and Brothers. They're a rock band out of Minnesota. You wouldn't hear their music if you just turned on the regular radio, because again, Clear Channel's not going to play them because they're not signed
Yeah.
to a big label. So you can turn on Real Music Radio and you can hear that gritty rock and roll music. That's four guys playing this amazing heartfelt music, again, that you wouldn't hear otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think we when we say we're a home for the musicians and we're a home for the artists, I feel like that's a pretty fair and reasonable statement, because if you're an independent artist and you're listening to this podcast, get some music over to me and we'll give it a shot.
Yeah. There you go.
I am a self-proclaimed music snob. If I don't like it, I'm not gonna play it. But most of the music that comes through, I have an open mind. I'm like, okay, maybe this song is, maybe you just didn't feel it right now, so I'll play it anyway, and I'll even put it on my show to get people listening, because maybe I didn't hear something in it that maybe you'll hear in it. You'll message me and be like, hey man, who was that band, or who was that guy? Or I'm like, you like that really? And so then I'll go listen to it again and check it out, and then maybe I hear it differently. Um, but where I tell my friends, I laugh, I say, where your emails are full of extended car warranty offers and spam, I'm like, mine is full of music, like from all over the world, people saying, hey, can you check my song out? And
Right.
so
Right. Right. Well,
for me,
that's great. I really appreciate what you do and what Real Music Radio is all about. And I'll leave a link to Real Music Radio in the description box on YouTube and also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so y'all can check that out. Check out Chris's show Masterclass. And what do you typically do on Masterclass? Are there interviews or is it
so
music or
we
both?
so we like I like to do a blend of both. Most of the time it is about 3 hours from seven to 10 central time. It's usually chock full of music. Um, Occasionally, I did more when I first started. I did more interviews and stuff. There were more things going on. There were more people that were accessible. Now, as people have kind of waiting for this documentary to come out and things like that, people aren't really trying to do a lot of interviews. There's not a lot going on. People don't have a lot to talk about at the moment, or they do, but they can't. So I'm hoping my goal, and I'll put it out in the universe, and maybe somebody listening will also assist with that. I would really love to get Susan Rogers. If I get no other interview this year on my show, I would like to get Susan
She is
Rogers.
the best, and she is to date. She's my favorite guest on the Purple Knights podcast. I've had her on twice, and she's absolutely amazing. I have nothing but love for Susan Rogers. So we'll see. I'll see if I can help you out there, Christopher, because she's a great person, and yeah, she's great to have on as a guest. So yeah, she's tremendous. But yeah, Real Music Radio sounds great. Masterclass sounds great. I mean, I gotta be honest, I'm 44 years old, but I sound like a grumpy old man when I say that I haven't listened to mainstream radio for, you know, probably 30 years. And most of the stuff that's considered, popular music, for the past 20 or 30 years, I haven't gotten into. So I could say like 90% of the artists that are played on like, places like Clear Channel and stuff like that, I don't vibe with. So
Yeah.
your station sounds right up my alley. So sounds like I gotta kick myself into gear and interact with your station a little more because it sounds right up my alley. Because,
Yeah.
like you
And
said, there's so many indie bands that don't get played or don't get the exposure, and Real Music Radio is putting in the effort to give those groups a platform and give them exposure. So I really appreciate that.
yeah, and one of the things that you won't hear also is you hear the same playlists over and over again on other Clear Channel stations. You won't
Yes,
hear that. You won't hear that on Real Music Radio. You might catch Alexander O'Neill twice in a day. You also might catch Alexander once a month. We have so much music that and the playlist we have them set up to, not repeat the same album, not repeat the same artist, not so we don't want you to turn it on and be like, oh my god, this is just a Prince station, or oh my god, all I've heard all day is XYZ. But you'll hear a mixture of things, and it's not radio edit. Like there's we can get away with a little bit more than regular radio can. So we don't play the radio edits of a song. um and that's another thing
nice,
I love
nice,
about the station is you're not going to hear Two Live Crew on there. We can't go that explicit, but if
nice.
other than that, like, if you hear a song, you hear the song the way it was intended, and you don't hear it mixed backwards or beeps or things like that. You hear it the way it was put out.
Right. Well, talking about these indie bands and indie artists, there's a band that I discovered years ago just by chance looking up Prince covers on YouTube, and I stumbled across this young guitarist from Indianapolis. His name's Brandon Berger, and he goes under the group name The Cosmic Situation from the Indianapolis area, and they're mainly blues rock, but they're really good. They're really good. So there's an example of an independent artist that I have. I have two of Brandon's albums, and they're both tremendous if you're into blues rock at all. So,
Heck yeah, maybe we need to make a connection.
yeah, definitely shout out to Brandon. I would love to collaborate with him sometime and maybe even have him on the podcast. But
Yeah.
he's a tremendous guitar player and plays live in and around Indianapolis. But I don't think he's ever gotten to any of the other states around the country. I'd love it if he was able to come to Minnesota, but I know it's tough for independent artists to travel outside their sphere of influence. So, but
Yeah.
the cosmic situation. Shout out to Brandon Berger uh, from the Indianapolis area, but he's tremendous. So I'll send you some links to some of to some of his stuff, Christopher.
Okay. Sounds good.
So okay, well, uh, thanks for joining me today and talking Prince a little bit. And as usual, I always ask my guests, where can we find you online?
Oh, you can find me on Facebook, just Christopher Arnell, or you can find Real Music Radio, um, just by that, by searching, and you can find me on Instagram, Christopher Arnell, also Real Music Radio. Um, for our South Texas Border Town show, we have a page specifically for it, STX Border Town. Um, Up until this morning, I was on X, but I deleted my account for obvious reasons on that platform. So right now, currently, just Facebook and Instagram are my only two places.
Yeah, I'm kind of disenchanted with X as well, but I'm gonna stay on there just because I guess it's my podcast account is pretty established, so I'm gonna stay on there and ride it out as long as I can. But I'm on Blue Sky personally, uh, which is a platform like Twitter, but less for the time being, a lot less toxic. So that's
Yeah.
artificial age, artificial age at bsky.app. That's app. I'll leave that link in the description, and I'll leave Christopher's links as well. I'm on X, um, uh, New Power Chris on X. I'm on Instagram, ChrisJ80, and also I have an Instagram for the podcast, Purple Nights Podcast on Instagram. You can go there and check me out. Um, yeah, those are all the places. Oh, I'm on Facebook as well. Uh, Facebook.com/ChrisJ80. So if you want to hit me up there, you can hit me up there as well. And for my on behalf of myself and Christopher Arnel, we'd like to thank you for watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And until next time, this is Chris Johnson. Peace and be wild, everybody.